Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, folks, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities PairOfNormal Guys podcast. I'm Garrett Jagaman.
And I'm your co-host, Daniel James.
And as always, we appreciate you tuning in tonight. Make sure you click the like, share, and follow buttons on whatever platform you might be listening to us from. The more that you do that, the more that it moves us up the podcast community rankings, more people that discover the show, and it keeps you in the loop on everything that we're doing, both presently and all of our past episodes as well. So make sure you check them out. There's something for everyone. And tonight we certainly got another doozy for you. We will be talking about Ouija, tarot, divination tools, a lot of different great topics that people were interested in, so stick around. But first, we do want to thank our sponsors, Cryptid TV, for everything that they do for us. If you're not aware of them, check them out on Facebook and YouTube. Search Cryptid TV, all as one word, and it's an underground community that shares a lot of different ideas and topics where you don't have to worry about being judged or get any backlash from your things that you're interested in. And it's just a great way of meeting people and coming together as an underground community on the paranormal and supernatural, so make sure you check them out. And if you haven't checked out our show before, we do want to welcome you. We talk over supernatural, paranormal, esoteric, occults, and much, much more. We give some different perspectives and ideas. Daniel and I jump back and forth on some maybes and some no's, and just a great way of discussing a lot of great topics out there. So thank you for tuning in, and as I said, make sure you hit the share button. We do bring you our show on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and everything in between. So Daniel.
So Garrett.
Divination tools tonight. We're going to be talking Ouija. We're going to be talking tarot cards. Some great topics, like I said, that I think a lot of people are interested in, and something I think that we're going to have fun talking about. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I'm into it. You know, I'm as always, Garrett's going to hit you guys with the cold facts, and then I'm going to give you guys a metaphysical perspective on that same science, and hopefully you guys will take away some new information on how to use these things as tools in your everyday life.
Absolutely. And you know, if you're not aware of our topic of the evening and what that means, divination is the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means. And there's a lot of different ways to do divination. There's techniques called scrying. You have, within scrying, looking at smoke, looking through mirrors, looking at oil, looking through water that's boiling. There's a lot of different ways to scry, and it's a technique that's used to help see the future, see different things that teach you knowledge. And, you have divination tools like dowsing rods. A lot of people consider Ouija a divination tool. It's in a form that, it is. I wouldn't put it in the same class as others, but great ways that you can use along with things like meditation to communicate. And I certainly have used several of these tactics and practices with my paranormal team and practices with my ritualistic magic that I do. Things that I'm involved with involve these things. Scrying being one of the biggest, which would be, use of mirrors. I personally like to use the mirrors. You can use crystal balls, like I said, but there is, if you use in the right mind frame in the right time frame, you can have things happen and you see visions within that. A lot of times if you were in a paranormal home or in a ley line where there's a lot of energy coming from that area, if you can channel on that and meditate on that, and you use the use of mirrors within that image of the mirror, you can see other things happening that will tell you something.
Correct.
It's debated. There's a lot of people think that that's bogus, but at the same time, I've witnessed it myself and seen visions of things that not only were wild, but at the same time, they do help lead you down your path, and that's hard to explain to someone else, but they're very real. They're very present. It's just you don't normally notice it.
100%.
Use of mirrors, and a lot of times, folks, if you've never seen this technique used, like I said, I like to mix and match a little bit. I like to use the use of candles with the mirror, because both can be used as scrying tools individually, but together I think it gives it a little bit more power. And I like to use the traditional black mirror that a lot of people use in the occult side. And if you look within that while the flames are burning, it gives a certain type of look. And if you just stare into it and you focus your energy and stare at it for a while, things will start to happen. And it's not your mind making it up. As you'll notice, it starts to free move, especially, as I said, if you're in a place of energy. They will interact with you using that tool.
Absolutely. And let me jump in real quick. Mirrors are powerful tools that tend to freak people out. It freaks people out when I say this, but when you look into a mirror, you're not actually looking at a reflection of yourself. Mirrors are a two-way portal into a parallel version of your own reality. So you're actually looking at another version of yourself that is also doing the same exact thing at the same exact time, looking back at you, mirroring your same exact actions. And that freaks people out. But if you stare into a mirror, like if you look into your own eyes into a mirror for long enough, you'll start to see signs of that, where the person staring back at you will start to break. That continuity of the reflection idea will start to slip. And I love the idea of using mirrors in low lighting. And if you guys have been listening to this show for long enough, we went really deep into this with our guest, Tim Shaw. We were talking about the concept of using mirrors to sort of see into other versions of reality. And the idea is with the candles is that you want to sort of take a mirror and place it so that it can see a wide open space. You want to be able to have room behind you, like negative space, if you will. And it works better if you're in relatively low lighting. So if you do this at night and you place some candles around yourself where you can see the candle in the reflection is even better, but also so that you can have some open space behind you. That's generally where you tend to see things manifest. Physical things can manifest in the reflections of these mirrors because it's essentially a portal into a parallel version of reality.
I agree 100%. I mean, that's the thing is a lot of people say, oh, yeah, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, when have you done it?
Try it.
And why don't you try it a little bit and focus pretty heavy on it and actually give it your all. Don't just pretend to. And if you do, you might experience some wild things.
Sit there for a half an hour with a large mirror facing an empty room behind you or an open space room with candle lighting and send us an email.
Absolutely. Please do. We would love to hear your stories. That even leads me to, and this one is more of a trippy type of experiment, but the Gensfield experiment where you put the ping pong balls over your eyes and you shine the red light on your face and you just sit and you stare into the redness.
I've never heard of this.
Oh, it's interesting, Dan. So you sit down on the floor, or wherever you want to sit, honestly, and you take ping pong balls, you cut them in half, and you place them over your eyes, and you tape it on.
Okay.
And then outside of the ping pong balls, you shine a bright red light in the darkness. So you're in a dark room, and a bright red light pierces through the ping pong balls, but it's still in like a dome fashion over your eyes, and you just stare into the redness. After about 15 to 20 minutes, you cross over. And when I say you cross over, I mean, you will see beings that are there. You will feel them. They will whisper at you. It becomes wild. It takes you to a different level of meditation than is normal, but you will literally cross over into this whole other thing. And for those that are listening out there, please try it. It's a wild experience, but brace yourself.
No, that's fascinating. And I could actually give you guys another example of, I think, technically what's happening in that process is if you can trigger yourself to disassociate from your physical reality you have wild psychedelic experiences, and I think that's kind of the same approach here.
It is. It's like a spiritual / psychedelic, self-induced, but it comes on, but it's wild. It's very interesting. And when you're, once again, I notice if you're at a paranormal spot, if you're at a place of high energy that you know that things are going to happen, and you do that, it fits with what's actually happening at the place. So you start to see visions, but it's visions of what's going on there. It's like I said, almost like you can somehow cross over and see a little bit of that world.
And have you done this one yet?
I have.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay.
I went a little deep, but it's interesting because I went a lot longer. You do like 20 minutes when you start out. I went like for 45, 50, and got a little lost in it. But it's an interesting experiment. Like I said, I think everybody should try it.
Very cool.
And we were talking about, mirrors, and one of the things I was going to say was mirrors go back to the old world of scrying and magic. They are also seen as portals to other worlds. It is also said that mirrors are windows to the parallel universes, but I'll leave that one for another time. Seeing, reading, peeping, and gazing are some, but not all, of the names used for scrying. And that is straight from medium.com quoted. I liked that column earlier when I was reading that it is an interesting thing that for the history of time, people have used mirrors in occult practices. I think that is where it's most most often used whenever channeling heavenly spirits or channeling demonic spirits. If you're doing anything like that with any type of occult magic, mirrors are a heavy play in that, or a black ball.
Mm-hmm.
There was different practices that I was studying and everything that used that, and have had fascinating results as far as conjuring.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, you can see things actually kind of manifest from that. It's pretty wild, but that's what I like to do is the mirrors. Now, one of the things that, like I said earlier, I wanted to jump into was the Ouija board side. I know that a lot of people bring that up as being like the end-all go-to, with tools. Every time you mention you're in the paranormal or anything into the supernatural, people are like, "Do you mess with a Ouija board?" I was just like that stigma about it that kind of came along with it, that everyone thinks that's the end all. But it is interesting. Ouija boards started here in Pittsburgh. So it's kind of near and dear to our city here. It actually started in February of 1891. So it's been around for quite a bit.
I did not know this.
Yeah, it's been around forever, and I knew that, but I didn't know exactly what year, so I looked that up earlier. And it's February of 1891. And the first few advertisements started appearing in papers saying that Ouija, the wonderful talking board, and it boomed in a Pittsburgh toy store and novelty shop, describing a magical device that answered questions about the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy, and promised never-failing amusement and recreation for all classes, a link between the known and unknown, the material and the immaterial. Another advertisement in New York newspaper declared it interesting and mysterious, and testified it was proven as patented before being patented for the price of $1.50. Excuse me, I messed up that last part, but that is definitely interesting. That was a column written by Smithsonian Magazine. But it's interesting to know it started here in Pittsburgh. Interesting to know that it's been around for, 100 and almost 130 years at this point. You ever mess with a Ouija, Dan?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I have not. It's not something that I've experimented with.
It's interesting. I mean, I've experienced some results, but it was a long time ago. It's not a tool that I use anymore. I've used tools to help with my practices, but that was never one of them. I never felt that was because I honestly, the truth be told, I think that you can use anything as a divination tool for the most part. If you were to just take a piece of paper and you were to write down symbols on a piece of paper and you were to stare at them and focus on them, you can use that as a divination tool as well.
100%, and I'm going to actually circle back on that towards the end of this podcast and talk about that very concept.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great way to do it. That's actually a big part of chaos magic. It's chaos magic is you use symbols and you write things that mean something to you and you focus on them and you give them power and you focus and those things will start to kind of manifest themselves. And people don't realize that you do control your life. You manifest what you are, who you are, and what you experience. So you need to kind of focus on those things. But how often in your day do you take time away from your day to really focus on where you want to be? You think about it. We're always thinking about it. But what do you do to focus on that? And that's one of the practices of chaos magic.
Very cool. Yeah, energy flows where attention goes.
Exactly. I like it. It definitely goes in great directions if you focus it. And that's the biggest thing is getting back to the same topic, is that people will naysay against it, but it takes a lot of focus. It's just like a superpower. I mean, you have to train that power to be able to really use it and manifest it correctly. And if you do that, then you can start to use it. It's just like a muscle. I mean, if you've never walked before and I just try to throw you, you're not going to be able to stand up. You know what I mean? You're going to fall. You have to use your legs to start walking. And that's exactly what this is. When you're using divination tools, when you're using energy work, you do have to use it regularly. You have to use it often and really shape it. Learn how to become stronger with it.
That's accurate. 100%. Just like a muscle, guys, you have to exercise it and practice it and put it into motion. And then if you get on some sort of regular practice, where you're taking time each day to work on those abilities that we all have innately to us, they start to become easier and more second nature. And then you'll realize how much what we call as sloppy thinking we've had in our lives, in our day-to-day lives, as we go through learning how to clean up our thoughts and focus on things that we want to see happen or strengthen in areas in our lives. It gets easier.
Oh, it does, because I mean that's it. It's your intent and your will are what you ultimately are. So if you have a lot of it and you push for something, you're going to get there. If you don't, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it seems so hard. People always talk about why they can't do things. They can't accomplish these things. It's because you stay in that area. You have to learn to channel that hunger, that passion forward to do that. But same concept goes for any type of magical work or occult work. When you're using divination, you have to give energy to that tool. I mean, tarot, for example, you can't just have a tarot deck and not connect with it. If you don't connect and feel energy and transmit energy into that deck, then you shouldn't be reading with that deck, because you're not going to give a proper reading.
Same with crystals and stuff. You have to build a relationship to the tools that you're using and connect to them. And part of that, just really, if you want to simplify it, just practice and spend time with your tools, And then the biggest thing that I'll tell you, and this goes for anything in life, okay, it's having the discipline to stick with it. The biggest challenge that people have when trying to make a change in their lives or take on a new endeavor, like using a divination tool or even law of attraction, is that when they don't get immediate results, then they get frustrated and they stop, or even worse, they lose belief in the action or the exercise itself because they're not getting immediate results. This is where discipline comes in. Not even faith or trust, just discipline. Just stick with it until you find your flow and your edge and you get into your own groove with it, and then you start seeing results, because there's something called the ripple effect, and this is also very present in law of attraction, which keeps people struggling very much, is when they're trying to do a new thing or use a new tool or use something like the law of attraction and just clean up their thoughts. When they don't get immediate results, they assume that it doesn't work. But there is a vibrational escrow, okay? And it works like this. If you have a certain thought pattern or certain belief structures that carry and perpetuate, when you change that suddenly, there's what's called as the ripple effect, where even though you've changed with your thoughts and your beliefs and maybe even your actions, there will be a ripple that will reflect back to you the old escrow of the energy that you've been sending out for so long. It will continue to reflect that old way to see if you've actually changed in your thoughts or in the respect of using a divination tool. If you don't exactly believe in the power that this tool has right out of the bat, you may have to stick with it and have a little bit of discipline with it for a while until it yields results, because this escrow, this ripple effect, it's testing you to make sure that you're ready for the change, or that you actually believe in what you're doing before you'll move on to the next step. So you have to stay with it long enough to get through that ripple period that's going to be giving you reflections of that old energy or that old way of thinking or believing. So stick with it. Have discipline.
You have to, and that's the thing. I think that's just humankind and mankind in general. They get defeated easily. But I think especially so now that people want that instant gratification, and if they don't get it, then it's like, oh, well, that's not real. They go on a ghost hunt for 6 hours and are like, I didn't experience anything. This is bogus. And I'm like, you went one time for 6 hours. Are you serious? Like, it takes time to hone in on what you're looking for. You know what? Something might have been right in front of you and you didn't notice it because you don't know what to notice.
Yeah.
You have to train that muscle. You have to train those skills, and that's with anything. Just like with divination tools, as we were talking, if you want to channel into that, you can't feel that object doesn't mean anything. Oh, it's just a mirror. It's this and that. You have to form a bond with your tools, with whether it be your dagger, your mirror, whatever it might be. In witchcraft, they have a lot of different tools, like their cauldron. I mean, you have things that you channel and focus on, because whenever you start to give emotion to it, it sounds strange, folks. But it isn't strange at all. It starts to build an energy from it, and then things start to happen, and things that you don't believe are possible are very, very possible.
Yeah, just have patience with these things.
You have to have patience, and it's not something that's happening overnight. It's not happening next week. It's not happening 3 years from now. It might take 10. But if you use 10 years of focusing, learning, you can learn to see into glimpses of other worlds and other things. And it sounds wild, but it's very, very real. And
you're talking to two guys right now that take action on this stuff. We're speaking from experience with having put in the time and the energy to experiment with what works for us and what doesn't. And a tried and true method is just a little bit of patience and a lot of discipline and belief in these things. That's all we're trying to do is make sure you guys, if you have an interest in these things, stick with it and see what it has to teach you.
I'm going to tell a story, if I may.
Yeah, please do.
So I go into this solo investigation by myself, old abandoned hospital, and it was in rough condition. I mean, I should not have been in this building. I definitely could have fallen through the floor and died, because as you're walking through the building, I mean, there's chunks of the floor missing, chunks of the stairwell missing. I'm like climbing up the side railing, hoping not to fall through. There's half the building collapsed in. And as I'm walking down the third floor hallway, there's cracks going down that you can see down through the 3 floors. And I'm like, I really want to investigate this building before it goes. And I knew it didn't have much more life in it. And I go there, and I'm getting these readings on my EMF detector over and over again. Boom, 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 boom. It just keeps happening. And it's happening upon request. I would say, can you stop that? Boom. Can you hit that again? Boom. And I'm like, wow, man, it's very intelligent, very, very responsive. Some of the quickest and most accurate response time I've ever had with any type of spiritual entity that I've worked with. And I'm doing that over and over again. So I'm investigating this building for quite a while, and I decided to pull out the dowsing rods, which is another divination tool. And sometimes I've had luck with dowsing rods before, but a lot of times of nothing. And it's one of those things, as we just talked about, it takes focus, it takes practice, and I'm not constantly using them. So if I was, I think I could get a little bit more honed in on them. But I used them there because I kept feeling an energy in the air. And when I pulled them out, it took me about a good 10 minutes of just straight focus on these tools. And I'm standing outside this room in the hallway, and as I start to ask it questions, and for those that don't know, it's 2 rods that pick up energy, and it can be used for different ways. Some have used it to find gems and gold and riches in the ground. It helps find things. And some have used it more for a spiritual side, for paranormal and for communication. And I was talking to a spirit, and through that I was able to ask a series of multiple questions, and then they cross it in X for yes. They push it far, far apart for no, or they stay centered for just no response. And you stay completely still, you don't move, you see that you're not moving, people see that you're not moving, and they'll move if you go to contact with a spirit. And I was talking to an entity, and throughout that I was able to discover it was a child that had died in the hospital, who was born there and never got to leave the hospital. And I know that sounds like oh, he's doing a tearjerker story, but this is true. And I had a picture that we caught during that investigation, because we had so many responses over and over and over and over again from this thing on the dowsing rods. And I had cameras going, and throughout the cameras of the building, I was able to capture a picture down the hallway of a young infant child laying there watching me in the doorway. And I didn't know I caught it till 3 or 4 days after leaving the investigation, and it validated what had happened in the experience. And the energy is the reason I bring this up. And obviously it's a divination tool, is that when I'm talking to them, you could feel the vibrations heavily. I felt it before with other spirits that I've communicated with, but this was shaking. I mean, it literally sent a pulse up my whole body, and I could feel the energy from this thing, even though I couldn't see it. But meanwhile, we caught it in the picture down the hall. So cool little side story of an amazing, experience with using a divination tool specifically.
Oh yeah. Any stories you can share about, positive results from these is good. It helps, people sort of anchor in the possibilities for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely something I'll hold near and dear to me. I found out that they are going to be tearing that building down before the end of this year. And it was a beautiful, huge, beautiful hospital at one point in time. But not no more now. It just sits there barren. But it was a cool experience to get to investigate, and I did it in the nick of time. So I'm one of those weirdos. I like going and seeing all the different old abandoned buildings if I know they have a story to them.
Or time capsules, really.
Absolutely. When they're gone, they're gone. And some of the architecture you see in these buildings, you'll never see again.
Yeah.
Such a shame. But, so talking about that, topics of divination, Dan, what are your thoughts? What do you have going on in your brain as far as, do you believe in being able, obviously you do, but I mean, things like using mirrors for visions, using dowsing rods. What are your thoughts on some of these tools?
Yeah, so let me jump in here. I have a tool to add to the list tonight. But before I do that, I want to give you guys a concept that will help anybody listening who wants to get into divination tools but maybe doesn't feel comfortable with a certain type or a certain practice. I want you guys to know that we create our own reality, okay? And what that means is, if you feel attracted to tarot or using the mirrors or runes or any sort of tool or exercise that you can use that's spiritual in a sense to help you better connect to spirit and maybe improve your manifestation abilities or whatever it is you want to do with these tools, I want you guys to know that I call these permission slips. Now, what I mean by permission slips is because we create our own reality, you can really label anything or any exercise that you resonate with as a tool for you to get what you want. So for some people, that might be tarot cards or crystals or runes or any of the number of the things that Garrett mentioned. But it's really what we're assigning power to. And now what I mean by that is there are sort of indoctrined things that everybody knows about that you can use to connect to the other side and use as a manifesting technique. But you could pick up a rock and hold a rock in your hand and then give commands for connecting to the other side, or maybe even just having something change in your life. Because whether you're using magic and candles or sage to clear your home or anything that you're trying to use through an exercise or with a tool, it's only powered by the belief that you give it and by the energy that you give that tool or that specific exercise in its ability to do what you want it to do. You are fueling it with your creator abilities, with your intention, with your belief. It's all powered by you. So if you don't directly resonate with any of the number of the things that are available to you in the spiritual sort of approach, you can make up your own thing. Whether that's just writing stuff out on a piece of paper and burning it, or whether it's maybe using mantras, or anything that you can think of, as long as you believe in it and you resonate with you as something that you feel will work for you, it has the same power as any of these other tools. And the reason why I'm saying is I just want to empower you guys into feeling like there are a lot of options available to you to express yourself through these tools and these exercises. And there may not be any one specific thing that's right for one person. Experiment with them, make up your own. All of them are valid and equal to each other. It's just a matter of your preference and what resonates. So that was a little, lecture that I wanted to give on the concept of divination tools, that they're all essentially permission slips, that we're giving that tool permission to act like the thing that's giving us the results, but it's really just ourselves and the energy that we give it. Okay, that's what I mean by permission slip, is that deck of cards or that sage or those runes are not totally the thing that is giving us the results. Those are the permission slips that we're giving ourselves as the creator. So
I love that. And I think that some people will hear that at face value and they'll be like, oh, that's heavy and that's great. And then some people will really hear that and understand what you just said. And that's amazing, because that is exactly what it is. You are giving yourself permission to alter what's around you. Yes, you might not consciously know it. You know what I mean? You think you use it as any other thing. Your conscious mind doesn't pick it up that way, but your energy and your intention has now changed that without knowing. You've given yourself a permission slip to change that effect.
Yeah, so it's almost like the tool is serving as a middleman in between us and the thing that we intend on achieving, but it's all really us.
Yes, absolutely.
No,
I love it.
Yeah, and the tools are just they're training devices for us to flex that muscle and get that energy flowing. And someday, maybe in a galaxy far, far away, in a distant future, what you can achieve with a divination tool is something that you could execute without the tool.
True.
It's just your intention alone. Like, say for example, one of the first things that I learned about magic when I was like a teenager is that the magic is only as powerful as the belief that we give it.
100%.
So here is a powerful technique that I learned in 2016, and I did it, and it was transformative, a little frightening in a good way, very effective. And if you're looking to perceive your reality from a new perspective that's out of the norm, here is a divination tool, and it's more of an exercise, really, that I could offer you guys. And it's similar to the one that Garrett mentioned with the ping pong balls and the red light. So here we go. One of the most leading factors in our reality that gives us a sense of continuity in terms of like time and physical matter, like our senses. And when I say our senses, I mean like touch, taste, hear, see. Those are your five senses idea. One of the strongest things that anchors us in our congruent reality is ourselves in reference to our surroundings. Okay? And that's why I'm talking about our senses. Because our senses, our 3D senses, are obviously what anchor us in our reality. If you touch something, you feel it, you know the distance between you and the object as you touch it. That gives you spatial awareness. Your vision, obviously, your smell and your ears, all of these things are what give you the linear understanding of your 3D world, okay? That being said, you don't know subconsciously how much your 3D senses anchor you in your version of congruent reality until you get a sense of it outside of those things. And this gets back a little bit to sensory deprivation. Like if you're familiar with the concept of sensory deprivation tanks, this exercise will be a very similar concept. So here's what you do. Go to a Joann Fabrics or any sort of crafting store like Michael's, and they have masks there, plain male and female masks. Or you can also order these online for very cheap. What you want to do is you want to get a plain mask that's just white or black or skin tone. The color doesn't really matter, but make it a neutral color that doesn't have a lot of patterns or anything like that. It's just very plain. Okay, you want to get a plain, neutral-looking mask. Then what you want to do is you go to a mirror. This gets back to the mirror concept, and we're also going to see how powerful those are in this exercise. Is you stand in front of the mirror and you put this mask on, okay? And I want you to stare at yourself, stare into your own eyes in this mirror for as long as you can. Now, when I say for as long as you can, I couldn't do it very long. And I'm going to explain to you guys why. I'm going to tell you what I went through so that you have an understanding and expectation of what you may go through as well. And this could happen for you within 5 minutes. It could happen much later. It could take, much longer, 25 minutes. I don't know. It's different for everybody. Look into your eyes in this mirror with the mask on. And the reason why this is so profound is, like I told you guys, the most congruent continuity of you and your physical reality is your physical appearance and the understanding of yourself in reference to your 3D environment. Okay?
Okay.
That's what anchors you in the 3D, in addition to your senses, is the awareness of yourself within the space. Okay? That's very important. So when you look into a mirror with a mask on, it disassociates you from your 3D reality because you know what your face looks like.
Wow, yeah, true.
You know your own appearance in reference to the reality around you. And as you disassociate from your own appearance, it disassociates you from the 3D senses, visually at least. And it can kind of separate you from the continuity that you experience day to day, moment to moment, from everything just as simple as this conversation or you walking into the kitchen to get a glass of water. You know what you look like and what you feel like in your 3D surroundings. So when you disassociate your physical appearance to that 3D environment that you're so familiar with, I can't tell you what the mechanism is that's happening, but it's breaking the continuity of your congruent reality.
Because that makes sense, though.
Now don't have a reference point of yourself to your 3D surroundings, which is very similar to what sensory deprivation tanks do. But I can tell you guys that when I did this the first time, it was earth-shattering. I had a physiological effect that I think that science, mainstream science tries to have a term for, but it's a spiritual psychedelic experience that I don't think has a true technical explanation in a way that we understand. But it felt like I was, now mind you, I've taken psychedelics and I've had some unique experiences on them. This particular experience was unique to its own, and it didn't require any sort of substance. All I had to do was wear the mask and look into the mirror, and it took me about 6 minutes of just straight staring into the mirror before it hit me. It felt like for 1,000 miles in any given direction, 360 degrees, I was actually alone in like a virtual reality or like a program or a hologram. But it felt like everything around me was just a holographic projection of matter that didn't actually exist.
Okay.
And I I freaked out, took the mask off, took a few breaths, drank some water, and thought to myself, I just had a real experience, and I don't know exactly what that means or how it's going to affect me in the long term, but that was strange. So I go about my business. 2 days later, I'm an actor, and I was cast to play a small part in a local commercial here in Pittsburgh, an advertisement. And I was in a room full of people, crew and other actors, and we were in like a dinner table setting. And I was just a patron in this restaurant. And while I was at a table of 4 people. I was the 4th. We were in between takes, and they were setting up for a new angle, and there was some downtime, and people were chatting amongst themselves, and I was kind of just in my own little world, minding my own business. The food was real, thankfully, and it was hot. And they were expensive plates of food, so I was eating it.
Absolutely.
And took a little break, took a sip of water, and sat there. And I looked around the room, and everybody just going about their business in between these takes. And all of a sudden, that sensation hit me again, out of nowhere, unsolicited. The same feeling that I felt when I was wearing that mask, looking in that mirror, and disassociated from my environment. It hit me in this room, and it was stronger and more potent this time.
Okay.
Now, it lasted about 20 seconds, 25 seconds max, but I can tell you that when I slipped into this alternate awareness, I'll call it, it felt like I was there for an hour. Time didn't really have a concept in this hallucination that I was experiencing. I mean, I had an alternate awareness in this moment, and here's what happened. All of the sudden, everybody in the room, which probably was upwards to maybe 18 people, give or take, 15 to 20 people, they all looked like NPCs in a video game.
Okay.
They all just looked like robots playing out like sort of like a habitual action, like a background character would in a video game that you walk by, but that they weren't really like there. They were just algorithms playing out a code. And as I looked at these people, I tripped out so hard because it almost felt like they weren't really there. And then that sensation came over me again where I felt like I was alone. For 1,000 miles in any direction, I felt like I was the only person that had awareness.
Okay, that's deep.
Around me, very deep. So what a perfect setting that this hallucination triggered, because I was on a movie set, and it felt like everything around me was really just a movie set. Yeah. Everything. Not just the room and the set, but like this fucking whole reality that I was in was just a stage.
And that's crazy.
Everything collapsed except for my awareness of my immediate surroundings, and everything in my immediate surrounding felt just like background noise, static. And so here's the weirdest part, guys. Mind you, this is 2 days after I did the mask exercise. All of a sudden I hear a voice. And it said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Well, I feel alone. I feel like I'm alone. And I feel like I'm the only person in the entire world." And then he said, "Well, would it surprise you to hear that this is actually how I perceive reality all the time? And that everything in my awareness is in some way, shape, or form an illusion." I said, "Well, I can't take this. I can't stand this. I need this to stop because my continuity is broken, and like I need this to. I can't do it." And then he said, "Okay." And in an instant, the sensation of feeling like I was alone, the only person in the world, started to fade away over the course of just a few short seconds. The voices, the people in the room's voices sort of bleed back into reality. They became a little bit more audible. They started to make more sense, and I could focus in on what each conversation was. And the crew was almost done getting set up for the next shot, and they were ready to roll. And it felt like it being in an episode of The Twilight Zone, where the guy wakes up and he's the only person in the town and can't find any real people. It felt like I just slipped out of my congruent understanding of reality, and the continuity of realism broke. And I can't explain it to you guys any more accurately other than the fact that it felt like I was truly alone in the entire world. And when I say alone, I don't mean like abandoned. I meant like everything that I perceive in physical reality only exists so that I can perceive it and walk through it like a video game, but that it wasn't empirically there.
Yeah.
And it cracked me. I don't know who I was talking to or what being that was. Maybe it was my higher self, like my higher mind. But I asked to go back to this version of reality because I'm telling you guys, 20, 25 short seconds of being in that state of awareness was too much to bear. And I don't know what version of reality that was or what type of psychedelic experience. Maybe my brain just randomly secreted like dimethyltryptamine, which is what happens when we dream.
Well, I was going to mention that because it sounds to me that at that moment of the mask, the cracking of the reality that you had made for yourself when you disassociated from the image of who you are and who you really are, when that cracking happened, I think that, you know, your third eye, your pineal gland fully opened at that point, because I think at that point it was like, whoa, lightning bolt. And it was quick. You would think that whenever it first opens that it would be like, whoa, because I'm seeing for the first time, but not necessarily. The eye has been closed for so long that it can't see clearly yet.
Yeah.
So, you know, a little bit of time goes by, it's starting to kind of loosen up, and then a couple of days later, you had it open its eye again.
Yeah.
And boom, it hit, and it was at that point, you know, you heard the voice, you met your holy guardian angel, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of magic practices really push for is the HGA, the Holy Guardian Angel. That you have ways of channeling and meditating and getting to certain points in yourself, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, of sharpening those tools. And when you use them, you can have communication with higher intelligent beings, and that's exactly how you do it. Something like that. And once that happens, Dan did it through an exercise that I never have tried, and I'm very intrigued right now. I want to try it.
It's a plain mask.
But I like it because I actually had seen myself as the mask. In my home growing up, there's some very creepy fireplaces, and above the fireplaces there are these dark mahogany wood fireplaces in this old Victorian home that I grew up as a kid. And the mirrors always had this weird look to them, and this is actually where my first experiences with divination, with mirrors, started, was in that home. And I remember staring in the mirror when I was younger because I would see things in those mirrors all the time. And I remember standing there several times in life and just staring at myself in the mirror long enough that the person in the mirror changed.
You lose, the continuity breaks.
It's
almost like you become unfamiliar.
Yeah, and I'm looking, and it truly became like I was standing there staring at a complete stranger.
Yes, dude, I do that all the time. I literally do that all the time, and I that's what I mean by the fact that mirrors are a portal into a parallel version of your own reality that's basically doing the same thing. But if you stare at it for long enough, you start to notice like inconsistencies.
Yeah, I think that people take it too much at face value when they look at it. Like you look in a mirror and that's the portal itself. No, the mirror gives you the ability to open the portal.
Yeah, that was a great
And
statement.
when you open the portal, it can be some wild stuff. How far down the rabbit hole do you want to travel? And it goes deep.
Endless. So you don't want to get really fucked up. Take one mirror and look at it. Look through it. Take a second mirror and place it behind you in such an angle that it reflects the first mirror. And now you're creating two layers of parallel realities. Oh.
You know what I've been thinking about doing, and it sounds completely far out there, folks, but there has been the thought itching in my mind of actually making some form of mirror box. That I sit in and meditate. That would become my meditation chamber, is literally a box big enough that I can sit inside of it comfortably, but it is 360 degrees mirrors, and it is dark inside, and you only have the reflection. You'd have a small glowing light of some sort, so you'd have just enough light that, a candle, whatever have you, and it most likely candles, and the reflection would be fully you in every direction, and it bounces off of one another, and then you just disappear.
I'd do that. I would do that. Like, you can go to the dollar store and get full body mirrors, cheap full body mirrors for $10. Just get a handful of them, tape them together and make a box that you can physically go in.
Yeah, that's strong enough that won't collapse, it won't break on you. The only one that wouldn't have a mirror would be the ground that you're sitting on. You don't want to have a mirror on the bottom, but you could have that wood or whatever you want to have. Maybe even put a cushion in there. If you're going to spend a lot of time meditating, you might as well be comfortable. But, that's intriguing to me. And, another thing I seen that was intriguing that I've always thought about, but I kind of went a different way and wanted to do the mirror idea, is there are a lot of people who believe in meditating, which I believe is the strongest divination tool, under pyramids. They form brass pyramids or copper pyramids above them, and they sit under them and channel, and they meditate, and they have fascinating results. Because once again, you're giving it the energy. You believe that, that shape, which actually is proven to have, properties in itself, you focus on that and you push more energy to it, and you meditate and you get deeper and deeper, and then it does become a tool, and it resonates that energy, and it pushes you, it propels you. It's the jet thruster to get you where you need to go quicker. And you cross that, you disassociate and kind of cross over. And like I said, that is the ultimate goal of most magic practices and most lodge magic schools that you can be a part of out there. The ancient esoteric wisdom is mainly to be able to do that, to learn to use tools and things around you to channel that energy, to be able to get results and make things happen until you get to the point that you can put the tools down because you no longer need them.
Right.
And at that point, you are the tool.
You are the tool. And that's why I told you guys everything that you use as a tool is a permission slip to give you the power to do of what you have innately within you.
Exactly. Now, a question I want to ask about that before I end up losing it is what are your thoughts on the stigma of divination tools? Obviously, you're messing with your own reality, and you're channeling energy, and you can use it for paranormal elements, things as well. But what are your thoughts on using it in the fact of demonic entities or lower vibrational entities channeling through that, traveling through other parallel universes? Because there's always the big stigma, Ouija boards, it opens portals to hell. You're using this or that, you're opening things and you're opening doorways, which I certainly believe in portals and doorways and have discovered and experienced them. But do you believe these tools are the openers, or do you believe that these wormholes are just there?
Well, when it comes to a stigma or even a taboo about these tools, is you tend to only notice a lot of pushback in the heat about people that practice them or the tools themselves from people who have a heavy religious background. True. Because people who are heavy in their religion, they give all of their power and their faith to their deity, to their God. So anytime that they see somebody exercising their own supernatural or metaphysical powers and abilities through a tool or a medium like this, it's generally those with that religious background, because you feel like they instantly label it as demonic or satanic or something negative, because it's basically a display of an individual using the power that they believe only their God has. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that answers your question. I think that most of the stigmas and the taboos, they do come from people who have heavy religious beliefs, because they want to reserve all of those creator abilities for their deity that they entrust in, which I understand and respect that path. It's just that Garrett and I are two people who are discovering the God within us, and the creator, the sovereign creator within ourselves. And with that understanding and belief comes the powers and the abilities to use these divination tools as they were intended. Okay, I don't smoke marijuana anymore. I can't actually. My own personal physiological system, it's just not conducive with any of those types of substances anymore. But I did very heavily. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because psychedelics such as dimethyltryptamine, ayahuasca, psilocybin, mushrooms, and marijuana, those tools exist for a reason. We call them spiritual tools, conscious tools. They're sacred medicines. Many people call psychedelics teachers, or sacred plant medicines is a respected term that they're used. And the reason why we use those terms with psychedelics is because, guess what, guys? They exist for a reason. They exist to be experimented with as tools to help expand our consciousness and open our pineal glands and broaden our awareness of more of what exists within reality. So what I'm saying is, if there is a tool that you resonate with, a division, these tools basically are there for you, is what I'm trying to say, to make it simple, so I don't go rambling about this. Any psychedelic that you feel you resonate with, to experiment with, any divination tool that calls your name to pick up and use, that's your permission slip. that will work for you, and your interest in it is all of the confirmation you need to reclaim that aspect of yourself that is your own creator sort of ability. And so look at back when, people were being burnt at the stake and being called sorcerers and sorceresses and witches because they were using medicine to heal people. But why does that medicine exist? It comes from the earth. It's something that is available to us to explore, to experiment, to use. So those are all just things that we have access to as creator gods, which is why I said generally religious people who have a heavy religious background are the ones who stigmatize divination tools, because people who are exercising their godship and using them are like blasphemous.
Yeah, I mean
because it's not their God doing it.
It's not their God, yeah, and they want to put rules to it, and then that can't be done, and that's not true. And they and then just with everything in history, I mean, religion does take a lot of play in changing how the story was as well. A lot of things taught in modern Christianity were stolen from roots of other religions and other cultures before those stories even happened. The roots were taken from elsewhere, and it's crazy to think of that, usually the naysayers, and I have nothing against Christians whatsoever, but usually the naysayers are Christians of some sort, and they're heavy in their religion. Now, it doesn't have to just be that. It can be any type of religion, but usually you notice that is the case. And it's just funny that, your religion is rooted in other religions taken from over the years. How could you be so stern in your belief to demonize everything else that's out there? Because, face it, folks, why don't they want you doing these things? Why don't they want you using these tools?
And let me tell you, it's very black and white. I'm sorry. There is no gray area in this particular idea. It's like this, guys. Religion, in terms of worship, places power outside of you to your deity. And then when you realize that God and Source is contained within you and you are an aspect of it, then all of that power is within and you contain it and you wield it yourself. So you can worship and give your power away to an idol, or you can claim your power, claim your godship, claim your sovereignty, and now you have the power. That's the difference. It's black and white.
It is. It's very, very much is, and that's the problem, is people don't look at it like that. If you use all your energy and you dispel all your energy, you no longer have that energy. But I bet if you've relaxed, got some sleep the last couple of days, haven't used and expelled all that excess energy, you're going to be very powerful at that moment. And it's the same type of concept, is you're giving your energy away to something else and all of your belief and will into something else, making you weak, making
subservient
you
to it.
Subservient to it.
Everything that you want and you need is now dictated by whether or not that God you place power in deems it worthy.
That's it, instead of just finding it within yourself, because you'll realize, as the saying goes, and we've said it many times, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the soul, so the body, because all of it is connected, that you can go ahead and give it away, but within you is everything that is without you. And it's all around you. You are a piece of the all, and the all is all. It's everything.
The one is the all, and the all is the one.
That is it. Other than that, that's really all I had on the topic for tonight. I mean, folks, it's something that, like I said, you should probably experiment with, get in tune with. If you have a passion in using these tools to discover spirituality and discover your higher self, to ascend, if you want to use it just for communication tools with the spiritual world, there is no right or wrong with it. It's something that you should learn to get in tune with, because as we are saying, Once you look inside yourself and start to really practice and strengthen those muscles of the mind, everything that you think's possible really is. But the reason that you don't think that it is because you've been made to believe that through your entire life, because they don't want you finding the God within, because once you have the God within, you no longer need to listen to any of their rules. And that's the problem, is once you discover that within you is everything, you have everything.
It's all within you. It really is. And that's the big difference between walking the Creator's path or having a religion. What we want to do, guys, is we want to empower you into showing you that everything that you want and desire is contained within you. It's not something outside of yourself that you have to ask permission for. Just grant yourself the permission.
And that's it. And spend time getting to know your mind. That's my last thing of the evening. Folks, if you are not happy with the way things are in life or you want to progress further, start to make the changes needed to make the change. And that can start. If you are a meditator, great. Continue to do it and do more time, add more to it. If you've never done it in your life, take time to get to know your own brain, to clear away the stressors of life, the noise, the static, everything, until you get to that piece of perfect harmony. And at first it might only be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 5 hours, whatever it might be. You start to gain more and more, and the more that you can stay in that peace, the more peace you have in your life, and the more that you notice that you go about life differently, that life starts to change for you differently. And that's just the beginning of the path up of a crazy mountainside. But if you want to travel that path, you can learn things about yourself you never thought you would, and you discover who you truly are and ascend. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like we're one of those nuts on the street corner holding up a sign, but we've just been people who've discovered it, and we want to share it with other people. And we talk about it in many different topics, but tonight was a very big one with channeling and getting to find yourself, and I feel the divination tools are the way to do it. So pick up a tool, try it out, send us your stories. You can hit us up at celestialoddities@gmail.com with any of your questions or concerns, anything you want to see us do on upcoming shows, and really just to talk with us. We'd love to talk with you. We love our fans, and we're always here for you. Dan, do you have any closing statements?
Go empowered, guys. Go empowered. You're driving the wheel, and the more that you claim that truth for yourself, the easier and the faster you can improve your life.
100% agree. Well, you heard it, folks. Try it out. Send us your stories. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you next time on Celestial Oddities.